Welcome to the swamp. I have never been so conflicted by a video game before. Have you ever liked a game, but it doesn't like you back? A beautiful mess that you know will never be redeemed and forever wallow in despair. Well, that's this game, Dark and Light. All dark, no light. My name is Excalligator. I rate games based on many categories that I would fit into most survival games based on a 1 to 5 system. If a category does not apply, it will not affect the game's overall score. Now let us get started. Before this review, I had once played this game in the past when it came to early access. I played it just over 200 hours. Years later, I'm now doing reviews, and this was next on my list. So I played just over 40 hours between the two available maps. There is a difference between the two. While I have been to the endgame before, this time around I wasn't able to finish the game due to the amount of issues with the game, but we'll get into that later. Dark and Light, I think, is a pre-existing IP that was brought into video game format. The game itself is built upon the foundation, or the core, or whatever, of Ark Survival Evolved, so you will see a lot of things that are straight from Ark, be it animations, text font, sound effects, and some mechanics. Though of course this game did try to take a different direction in other aspects, such as making this a high fantasy setting rather than sci-fi dinos. Also, on top of the normal base leveling and progression system akin to RuneScape, where you level each skill separately, which leads to being able to use other skills and so on. However, this game was never fully realized because this game was abandoned by the devs in 2020. While this game may not run well due to the issues and bugs of the game itself that will no longer be hotfixed, the game can run on a mid-range computer. This is one of the few survival games that allows you to play as a non-human. You could choose between a human, dwarf, or elf. There is also quite a wide range of options with scales to make your character. The first time I played this game, I had made an elf. This time around, for both of the maps, I made a dwarf. I would recommend that you do not hit the randomize, though, because you will get absolutely hilarious results as you see here. Just like in Ark, you can go from Popeye to the world's tallest dwarf or the shortest elf with massive bulging thighs. Since the customization is a bit touchy to result in weird, non-realistic body shapes, this will be a 4 out of 5. It's just the lesser restrictions that bump it down, but the fact that you can have wildly different characters from other players and a choice between races is very good. I do like the loading screen, how it's hand-painted with minimal animation to look like a living painting. It's something you would find from an MMO typically. Either way, it looks nice. From there, you arrive in the world of whatever map you choose. I will have to go through both maps separately because of two things. One is a huge flaw, and the other is something good. I'm going to start off on the second map, which had Shard in the name. I don't really remember how to pronounce it, but this is the second map that was added later in the game's life. The newer one, as it were. This one I started on first for this playthrough, since I had not played it before, so it would be a new experience for me. Within the starter camps that you could choose from, you have access to food, water, and 1 or 2 shops. The starting areas typically are safer, with less aggressive creatures, though the few creatures that do spawn can and will kill you if you are not careful. That is something the old map does not do. Well, I will get to that in a minute. Before that, I wanted to say how this map also has a ton of available resources from the start, and has even a desert biome that the other map does not have. Now for the Sacred Path, which is the original or older map. When you start off in the main racial city of your character. This will be the safest area for you, as once you step outside the city, the world is filled with not only weak, but also very powerful monsters. Just outside the Elf City has around 2 wraith spawns, and those guys slap hard. I remember the first time I played this game, I thought it was a good idea to make a home on the beach, right outside the Elf City. Turns out it was right next to a wraith spawn, so I was forced to move as he kept destroying my buildings. The last thing I wanted to talk about in this section is how you progress. Just like in RuneScape, you will have many skills that you level up independently. They will only grow when they are unlocked, which could be just your normal main level or after you complete a quest, or even reach a rank in another skill. I will talk more about that in the PvE section and the bugs section because there is a major flaw with the questing, which affects the skills. Anyway, starting off in this game can be either not so bad or a fucking nightmare. While the choice of map does have a factor in that, it also depends on the biomes and the playstyle. So it will average out to a 3 out of 5 for this section. Unless you needed to find a specific creature to kill or tame, there is no reason to explore the various biomes. There are 3 working dungeons, at least in the current build that I saw. There are a ton of portals that look like dungeon entrances, but none of them work, minus the 3 I mentioned. And there is not a lot of variety with the resources between the biomes. I've managed to find most resources in most biomes, minus a select few, at least on the old map. In the newer map, I found mithril, which is a high-end metal, near one of the starting locations, so yeah. On the older map, the various factions, while you can visit other cities, the races will not speak to you if you are not of that race. You are also barred from half of the city, so as a dwarf, I can talk to all dwarves and explore the full dwarven city, but I am not able to speak to elf or human shops, nor see half of their city due to gates and doors that will not open for me. The Shard map, which is the newer map, has no cities, only small camps which can be accessed by everyone. On both maps, there are few creatures that are biome specific, like lava tigers, frost giants, and light spirits. Those specific biomes are also very small. The majority of the map is forest and mountain, which means you will only see like 6 types of creatures for most of your playthrough. Even on the second map, while it has different creatures completely, the same rules apply. On both maps, most resources are available on most of the map, with of course the best being on the top of the mountains. So there's no reason to explore unless you want to tame a certain type of creature. Resources can be found in most spots of the map, with only a few exceptions. This will be a 2 out of 5. The only reason it is not a 1 is because it is still fun to see the various points of interest, and it has a lot of fantasy influences. The survival, as I mentioned in a previous panel, can be either okay or hell. The creatures are very unbalanced in terms of stats and spawning. They have high aggro and slow your speed when they hit you, which means it's nearly impossible to run. Powerful creatures like wraiths, bears, panthers also spawn right in the starting zones on the original map, so they will hinder you most of the start of the game. During my very first playthrough, I had to stay in the main city and level up through punching rocks and trees, looting crates for food and items until I could manage the world. Food and water is not an issue, nor engaging. It is more of an annoyance, since you get plenty of food resources and water resources. It's just there to be there at this point. My rating will be a 2 out of 5. The reasoning is because of the unbalanced nature of the creatures, from their strength to their spawning, down to the fact that the survival aspects such as food and water is almost unneeded since there are so many ways to negate it from the start of the game. Let's start off with the building. The building is pretty standard at the start, from thatch to wood to stone, even metal building pieces. The building mechanic alone is pretty much copy-paste from Ark. But what separates it from Ark is that you can also make racial buildings at Endgame. Similar to Conan Exiles, Conan has a basic buildings for leveling, but has all the various skins of buildings for the last tier, which is endgame materials and such. That's the same here. It will just be less of the variance, but hey, I'll take 3 skins over just 1 or none. The crafting is all dependent on the skills. You level your skills by farming up the materials needed in each of the respective skills. For example, cutting wood will give you experience in ranged, woodwork, and so on, while farming rocks and metal for forging and melee. Also fire magic because of the sulfur you get from the rocks. It's a very unique system for a survival game, even though it is similar to RuneScape. However, there is an issue. You cannot learn certain skills nor abilities because it requires the completion of quests. The quest can only be completed on one of the maps. Even though it gives you the quests on the older map, they eventually get to a quest where you have to kill a creature only found on the newer map. Therefore, you cannot complete it at all on the older map, though it works perfectly fine on the newer map. I will talk about that again in the PvE section, but for now, it is hindered. And finally, the farming. It's pretty much the same as Ark. You make your box, plant, water, and fertilize. The only difference is that the fertilizer is much easier to acquire, and it rains more often, so your plants live longer with minimal work. So with the building being mostly standard, but with a bit of flavor, crafting being fun yet hindered, and farming being just like Ark but a little bit easier, I'm going to rate this whole section a 3 out of 5. If the hindrance of the abilities wasn't there, it would be a 4, but I have to look at it overall for both maps, not just one map, so yeah, 3 out of 5. Alright, this is gonna be a very long one, so saddle up. First, There are very few dungeons, only 3 from what I found, but I found a ton of portals around the map that look like as if they could be dungeons, but they don't lead anywhere, which was very disappointing. The dungeons themselves were alright, but nothing really to write home about. There is questing, but I have 2 issues with the questing. While they are simple and actually help tutorialize you at the start of the game, only one map can function with them. Because both maps share the same quest, there are a lot of quests that are to kill creatures that are only found on the newer Shard map. So if you play on the older vanilla map, you will be literally unable to complete these quests, which will lock you off from other quests and some skills and crafting items as they are rewards for finishing the quests. I even tried using command codes to summon in the creature to try to complete the quest that way, and it happens there's not even a code to summon in the damn creatures from the new map to the older map. This happened for at least 3 to 4 of the quests, so yeah, it is literally impossible to complete the quest and get various crafting and skills because of this. The second thing I didn't like about the quests is that they are menu based. You don't find any quests in person, so it kind of gets rid of some of the immersion. One thing I really do like is that you can purchase things from vendors and sell things for gold. Not only that, you can donate gold to vendors, which will upgrade them and allow them to get better grade materials and items to spawn. Their shop also refreshes once per in-game day, so every time you go there will be different things available. In the cities, there are also rentable houses, so instead of building a home, you could rent one. There are also some villages around the map with empty homes also that you can rent. But this feature, so far as I've seen, is only on the old map. I did not see anything like this on the newer map. The newer map does not even have cities, only campsites. You can also find vendors to sell horses to you, which is the only way as I've seen to obtain a horse. Be wary, because when you have a tame, they are automatically set to attack guards, so you need to set them to guard or passive, which is confusing because it never really tells you what they are actually set to, only what you can select to next in the cycle, so you have to kind of guess at it based on what is next one in line. I had several times where I had a tame, didn't realize it was set to aggressive automatically. I tried walking into a city or a camp and it started attacking the guards. Luckily, I got out of there right on time before the guards killed my deer. As mentioned before, the creatures in this game are very unbalanced. Going back to Ark for a moment, you have easier creatures on the beach and harder towards the mountains, right? While in this game, there are creatures that are biome specific, the creatures in those biomes are mostly all medium to hard, which will wreck a lower level ungeared player. Even when you have pets, you have to find a way to gear and level with minimal higher level creatures attacking you. This isn't as bad on the newer map, as the area I chose to start seemed relatively safe, until I went into another biome and then got slapped by a big ass frog. But in the old map, you primarily have forests and mountain biomes, with few others scattered around. The mountain biomes are all clusterfucks with only 3 or 4 creature types that continuously spawn and kill each other. God forbid one of them chases you, let alone 5, or just all of them. Creature levels are just like Ark, where the creature itself tells you how strong it is with its base stats, and the level of the creature amplifies it. So a level 1 elephant will destroy you, but a level 60 sheep will only take 3 slashes of your sword instead of just 1. There are also elite creatures that are visually different because they glow gold. Several of these elite creatures have a chance to turn into a legendary beast, which is basically a world boss, and these world bosses can be tamed. That sounds cool, right? Here's the issue. You have to trap the creature, then sit right next to them and not let them leave your sight for around 15 to 20 real-life hours. On a multiplayer server, you can trade off with other watchers as long as someone is watching the creature, but good fucking luck solo unless you use the command code SLOWMO50, which is what I had to do here as you see. I SLOWMO 50 here to show you how long it takes. Luckily, the unicorn caught on me, so I didn't have to keep chasing it around. Eventually, it turned into a Pegasus, which even with the SLOWMO 50, took around 3 to 4 in-game days, but it was around 5 to 10 minutes for me in real life. I had no way to tame it legitly, and I didn't really want to force tame it, so I tried to kill it, but it wasn't working out so well. So I got cheeky and brought it to the Elf City to see if it would wreak havoc. The guards and Pegasus didn't really seem to care about one each other, so I decided to kill it with a command, and then I summoned in the Crystal Beast, another legendary which evolves from a Kebo. Now we get to see some real carnage. Away from the creatures, we have combat itself. Let's pretend that the creatures are balanced and that you can have a one-on-one fight fairly. The magic and melee system are pretty good. It's pretty much click and hit like most survival games, but there is a bit more animation to it to look more stylish. Melee will feed off of stamina like normal, while magic feeds off a type of mana system. Just as stamina regenerates by feeding into your food bar, your mana feeds off of what is your sleep bar. So you do have to sleep, but unless you're a magic user, you won't have to sleep as often. Plus, sleeping is only a few seconds long, so you really don't have to spend long to recover your stat. As a bow user, I only had to sleep once every few in-game days. I used a bow since I could do some damage before the creature reached me, then I would switch to my sword for melee combat, or if they were slow, I would just kite them. I also cheesed them on some fights and went up to where the creature could not reach me and then just kept firing down arrows. So all in all, tons and tons of issues with this section, but there are some good things that I like about this game. However, the cons will outweigh the pros here, so I'm gonna have to rate this section a 2.5 out of 5. I will not be able to rate the PvP. I did not play on a multiplayer server the first time I played this game, only solo, and this time around the servers were so dead it would be impossible for me to rate it to begin with. Though this also informs you that you will not find PvP due to the fact that the servers are dead. I am not going to rate this section because of that. I am not going to rate either of the story sections. While there is an intro cutscene, who the fuck even knows what's going on? Especially that in this game there is no story to find or progress in-game itself. Therefore, there's not really any story at all. So, no rating. While I did play a little bit of what is Endgame at the time I played this game several years ago, for about 200 hours, I wasn't really able to hit Endgame this time around because of a combination of not being able to complete quests, crashing, and I also split my game time between 2 different maps, so I had to start over again. Even then, the endgame is lackluster, there are only a few dungeons, the legendary beast you have to command code slow-mo in order to even summon it, because it will be impossible on a server, there are no mods, and there will be no content updates. So while this game can give you a bit of a challenge, and even some fun while leveling, if you can get around all the issues that is, it will not have any post-end level things to do, and never will in the future. I'm gonna rate this a 2 out of 5. It really should be a 1, but I gave it a bump because I could see a roleplay server still having fun with this if one ever got started and got a player base, though we know that won't happen. While there is mod support on Steam Workshop, it is not active. There's only a total of 3 pages of mods, and most of them don't really do much. This is a dead game. It could have been taken into the player's hands and kept alive with player mod bug fixes and content updates. However, that is not the case, so I'm gonna have to rate this section a 1 out of 5, which is a damn shame. This section, off the bat, is gonna be a 1 out of 5, due to the fact that the game is absolutely dead, player-wise, and abandoned by the devs. There will be no updates and is still in the 2020 Halloween event update. They couldn't even bother to take off the Halloween stuff, so on the newer map you will see pumpkin goblins and guards in costumes, which looks fucking stupid. I'm gonna rate the bugs and lag a 1 out of 5. If it was still active in development, it would have still been a 2. The lag wasn't too bad with minimal frame rate drops, but my game continued to crash. I had at least 5 throughout this playthrough alone. Some other bugs I found include being forced up through the mountain while trying to explore the internal sections of the Dwarven City. This happened to me at least 3 or 4 times. When I'm walking normally, my character will dodge roll for no reason, even if I don't double tap, which has led to a lot of issues and just being annoying. While I don't think it's a bug, I'm also going to point out that there are a lot of words that are misspelled in areas, sometimes in another language, or just flat out have different names in different menus. Like the hyenas being called hyenas in-game, but in the bestiary they're called bargesh. Most creatures are like this too, not just the hyena. I already explained that it's impossible to complete quests on the old map. Either way, I've already covered most of why this section is a 1. Let's just move on, this video is getting too long. It kind of breaks my heart because there was something really special here, an open world RPG that has a RuneScape progression system, but also with arc taming. The high fantasy of it all, having NPC cities with vendors, rentable homes, world bosses. This game had the potential, but just couldn't handle it all, leaving it now an unfinished husk of a game with many issues and bugs that will never be fixed, being in a permanent ×2 experience mode and not even getting a hotfix. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to rate this game a 2.5 out of 5. If this game had a fan base to make mods, the major issues could have been fixed by the player base and made this game bearable and even added more content. But being that there is no community, with myself only seeing 3 people online over the many servers that are still running, I can't rate it anything higher than what I have. Let's hope one day we can get an amazing high fantasy survival game in the future. This genre is really lacking it. If you want to try this game out, you are more than welcome to. Like I said, if you can get around the issues and bugs, this game is really fun and it's a great time waster. But if you can't handle the crashing, no updates, empty worlds, then it might be a good idea to pass this one on. And that is the end of my review. If you liked my full review, please subscribe to this channel, as I will be making more in-depth reviews and even TLDR versions of many open-world, sandbox RPG games, including those that no one ever talks about in the deepest, darkest depths of Steam. Some games that even look like the muck at the bottom of my pond. If you have any suggestions for which game to do next, please comment below. Florida Gator Man out!